Welcome to Insight, where today I'm joined by Michael Jansen, Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of Cityzenith, a technology developer that helps governments make sense of their data through digital twin technology. In today's episode, Michael and I explore the booming digital twin technology market, which looks set to exceed $38.5 billion as of 2025, a significant rise from its current valuation of $3.8 as of 2019. Another key thing we explore is what role digital twin technology could have played and will play in future crises, such as the COVID-19 pandemic.
Michael Jansen, I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Cityzenith, which I'll be talking about today. Broadly, digital twins are virtual replicas of physical building assets and infrastructure connected to the data in and around them. And they're used for a variety of purposes to optimize design and planning, construction, and then ongoing operations of these assets. The idea is pulling all the data from disparate sources into a single pane of glass 3D platform, which is probably best described as a real-world Sim City or something like a Minecraft for architects and developers. But this environment allows us to do something unique. Projects at scale, large-scale projects struggle. Cities, campuses, ports, airports, universities, medical campuses today, which are all now data-driven, struggle to integrate the multitude of tools and software services out there needed to really do that efficiently. I mean, you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars. There was a need in the marketplace for a platform that could kind of consolidate all those pieces. And they're very different pieces. 3D BIM models from architects, that's one type of software. Internet of Things sensors detecting pedestrian foot flow. And then maybe boring old PDFs and Excel sheets from a public database. All of these come together into a single environment and then can enable a rich plethora of analytics to results.
Yeah. So it's quite clear then, just in that sort of introduction alone, you talk about digital twin technology, you talk about data, you talk about all these sort of inputs and tools and platforms, and obviously, you talked about the healthcare sector, you talk about architecture and also sort of citywide use of kind of digital twin technology there. And it's quite clear that the use cases and the need for these are very obvious. It seems almost like we should be doing these and, why haven't we been doing them before now? But, talking at sort of like where we are right now, or even before the last 12 months, of course, with the pandemic, kind of broadly speaking, what was the general conversation surrounding digital twin technology, digital cities, that sort of thing, in terms of where were we? What was the sort of the main what kind of maturity level were we at the start of last year, so to speak?
A large global market, fragmented and in the process of learning. Many projects are in their first iterations, or many companies are deploying their first generation digital twin solutions. A recent report by, I think it's Markets and Markets, suggested that 2/3 of companies would be using some digital twin technology by next year, which could become the year after, given COVID. But that's a large number. I think we did see a lot of general interest in digital twins being used as kind of a new component that would be necessary in a large project. So we suddenly got introduced into these large-scale smart building projects, into airports, into seaports, we did the largest, I think, high-speed rail project. I think it was in the UK, actually, with W.S. Atkins and Langor Rourke and some folks. We were the digital twin provider on a first project there that could, on a high-speed rail line that connected Oxford to Cambridge. So there was a lot of that type of awareness. I think largely, though, prior to 2020, it was kind of in the consultant world. As the 2019 pushed on and 2020 pushed on, I think the owners of these assets, the operators, the end users began to catch on more to the trend. And COVID kind of made everybody rethink what they're doing. One of the biggest challenges with any new technology adoption is, why? I mean, things are okay. Are you really going to make them that much better? And COVID forced people to pause in such a way that they kind of had to reconsider everything they were doing. And coming out of COVID, one of the things that people realized is that multiple areas of business and personal functions would need to go digital. The way in which we talk communicate, function as teams, receive information about assets, control those assets, whether those are the financial assets or your home stereo equipment or thermostat. A lot of this would have to go digital, and not only that it could, but not that it should, but that it could. I think a lot of people were surprised by the success of how virtual companies do pretty well and cut some things out. Not only that, but suddenly discovered they can hire people from anywhere because they kind of figured out how to be virtual. So there's a lot of that push towards virtualization and digitization is helping push the digital twin trend, and you're seeing it really across sectors right now. Our particular focus has been, yes, buildings and infrastructure, but the energy side of that. We made an announcement last year about a new series of renewable energy-driven smart cities that are being planned for the state of New Mexico, which we should soon be starting on. So we're quite excited about what that could mean, and they want to use digital twin technology from the outset to plan the entire thing. They're going to have multiple stakeholders, government, the engineers, contractors, all using the same twins. The level of integration and cross-sector optimization will be through the roof. And that's just how things are going to be delivered in the future. We're seeing the beginning of that. And digital twins are finally kind of making some of that possible.
And you said there then that, and it's a common, like you say, it's a common challenge across any form of technology, is essentially why. Like question one, challenge number one, why? Why do we need to kind of invest? Why should we put our money into this? That sort of thing. But specifically thinking about then, digital twin technology, what are some of the other key challenges that, even now, but obviously over recent years, have sort of prevented the conversation from going further? So that have kind of, I don't want to say held it back, but perhaps just represented some form of roadblock towards making it much more, I don't want to say mainstream, but, kind of being more widely accepted and like I say, more mature than it already was.
I think that there was a number of factors contributing to that. The digital twin technology took off in certain sectors quite quickly. So in the aerospace sector, with turbine design and development, within the manufacturing sector, with plant floor design and development and plant operational workflow optimization, it kind of moved quite quickly in that space, but didn't really move as quickly in other spaces. Real estate was kind of looking at it. Healthcare was being used very selectively. Infrastructure knew it should be using it, but didn't quite know how to use it. I think I would attribute it to a few things. One is just any new technology needs, especially in the real estate sector, the built environment sector, is going to get a lot of suspicious eyes on it because there's been so much technology selling to that sector for so long, and there's such a cacophony of tools out there already that really, before the whole sector buys in, there needs to be a handful of referenceable examples of big success stories. And I just think there weren't enough of those. That's kind of point two. Not enough good digital twin pilots, really, that are thorough enough. We did a whole bunch of what I consider to be more skin-deep pilots, and it wasn't until recently that we began to do things of greater import and significance. The kinds of things we're doing right now for the energy services sector, confidentially for the U.S. military, these things are very, very deep. And deep level cooperations that are teaching us a lot about what digital twins really need to be. Third, I think, like with anything else new, everyone got excited, but then you have to think about, do I really need that? Like, just you can think of 1,000 technologies that fit that similar type of bill. I mean, I would even argue that something like a Fitbit, like a little wrist thing, which was a great idea, but if you didn't have one, you could keep exercising. It's cool. So I think there are a lot of things that it really has to kind of become more popular, more necessary, more of an ecosystem kind of built up around it. I think once it became a thing that there were apps for this data, and you could still learn things about it, and we got integrated in all kinds of other devices. Suddenly, maybe we do that. So with digital twins, I think the strongest use cases are kind of coming out sort of now. What I see in the future is certainly urban scale digital twins are a no-brainer. There's an article recently published saying that 500 urban scale digital twins will be in existence in the next 3 to 5 years. Now, there's only 600 or 1,000 cities, I think, over 1 million people, so That's most of the world's big cities, right? So I think in the built environment sector, same thing. Large-scale deployments of digital twins for infrastructure projects, large-scale building projects. So that's all kind of in the offing right now, and I would expect you'll see a lot of it in the next 2 or 3 years.
And one thing I always like to ask people, in a similar position to yourself, particularly when it comes to technology, is you're absolutely right. When it comes to use cases, we champion them, we talk about them, we essentially say, look, this is why we need it. This is a good example of how it should work. But I sometimes think as well that there's a lot of value to be had in looking at why things don't work. So with that in mind, when it comes to some of these examples, some of these use cases of where digital twin technology has been implemented, how important is it to say, well, look, here's some examples of actually how it didn't work, and here's how we should learn moving forward, and how that should kind of dictate a clearer path to making it more widely adopted, as opposed to just simply saying, yep, it works for everybody, it works in every industry, here's why, let's go.
Well, I think there's a need for more and more project level interactions around digital twins. There's lots of talk, lots of conceptual events that talk about the high level values that digital twins promise. But we're organizing, for example, through our Clean Cities, Clean Future campaign, a webinar event, which we're calling a forum, when major cities are being invited. We've limited it to 10. We are, we know who some of them are going to be: New York City, Melbourne, Ankara, Vancouver. Some big cities will be a part of that, and we're going to be exposing them to digital twin technology for the first time to show them what it is and how it works. The focus of that, hopefully, will be a major project that we're taking on in New York, right, coming up soon. That will be a kind of demonstrator use of a digital twin to help a major area of New York and its building owners gain access to the information and tools they need through the digital twin technology to put themselves on a path towards decarbonizing their buildings. And we're doing this in collaboration with the city, with many other commercial companies that provide important elements of the chain, as well as several big-name New York real estate owners that are going to all take part in this, and we're going to show exactly how this would work, such that such a program could be scaled across not only a jurisdiction but an entire city, and of course multiple cities. So we plan to fail in some areas, and we plan to talk about those failures. I'm a businessman, an entrepreneur, but my DNA is architecture and engineering. You can never lie your way through a good design or a bad engineering job. So the thing that I always appreciated as a CEO was that I used to make things that had to, that cost hundreds of millions of dollars and had to stand up for 100 years. So the importance of doing it right the first time and being candid and involving stakeholder input and being open about the process, I think, is important to getting a good conclusion. So that's the approach that we take. That's the approach that we tend to take. Most of our clients, we come in and say we're an imperfect company, but we have a terrific piece of core software that can be further delivered into something. And the reason we do that is because we want to avoid making the promise that we do everything. First of all, we don't believe that that's what digital twins are about, really. They're very use case specific. There'll be lots of different types of digital twin answers out there. Ours is more platform approach, which means we're trying to automate as much of that as possible. But even then, there's still a manual component to delivery, and there'll be different answers out there. Our hope is that we can work with, if we're lucky, some of these city networks and cities to develop digital twin platform standards that will be easy to plug into. And that's an aspiration that we're now introducing to city networks. I think ultimately for digital twins to really be successful, that has to happen. There are things like the Digital Twin Consortium. Countries like the United Kingdom have a national digital twin program. The US has a digital twin standards for the AIA. That's all great, but there really needs to be a common agreement on data model and probably a common agreement on core technology too. So we'll see. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, it's best to be talking about real things and to be candid.
So, obviously you've already mentioned as well. Then COVID-19. The last 12 months have completely, undoubtedly disrupted so many things, both human life and business life and economies and that sort of thing. But one thing that I'm always interested to explore is to look at what that's done in terms of helping people reflect, helping people, businesses, technology people, that sort of thing, to look at what they thought was right in a different perspective. And you've already talked about how COVID has made people in the last year start to look at stuff like digital twin technology through a different lens, approach it a little differently, and think more holistically, as it were, about it, just to sort of reconsider it. So it's fair to say then that has the appetite for digital twin technology, has it significantly increased in the last 12 months, more than perhaps it would have done had COVID not been around, or has it almost held it back? Has it pushed it back? Sort of, what's your view on that? How has that conversation changed directly as a result of the last 12 months?
It both pushed back project starts and significantly increased overall market interest. So the pipeline of work we were able to develop during COVID is off the charts. The fact that a small company was able to land a big contract with the U.S. military, one of the most prominent smart districts in the southeast United States, which is the Orlando Sports and Entertainment District, and some major mega projects in the Southwest. And that's just us. There's a lot of work going on out there, I think, which is indicative of a trend in that direction. And the pipeline that was generated as a result is significant. Wasn't really expecting that. So what we did was, because we knew the projects would be starting later, we decided to use that time to just work on the software and work with our existing clients to continuously improve, to push out a new release, which we're about to release in March, called Smart World OS. And we're calling Smart World Operating System. This is the first time we're actually calling our product a digital twin operating system. In other words, you can run a city on it, which we've never been able to do before. And we've used the time that we had to really just frankly bury ourselves. We doubled our head count. We added lots of engineers across the U.S. and Europe and India to our team to help us get to this next phase. But in terms of what it meant for me personally as a CEO, I'm 51 years old now, so I have run offices since I was 29. And originally, those were somebody else's offices, two major architecture firms that I ran offices for in Asia. And then eventually my own company, which Sequoia Capital came in and backed and grew to 500 people, and now this new one. So I've been watching this for a long time, and it's kind of made me think about how I want to grow this business and the tools available to grow this business. We realized that because you can't really fly anywhere anymore, that how are you going to get the word out to all those people? And we suddenly had to take digital marketing to a new level, and we began right in the beginning of 2020, really pushing out a much more aggressive campaign. Hired a firm out of London that has a lot of people on that team and inside our team all working together, because so suddenly you had to get two people, no trade shows, no in-person meetings, meeting somebody at an airport. How are you going to do that? And that was so successful for us. I realized that I don't want to say that my ways got outmoded, but I grew up, Dale, the way that a lot of people would at my age, which were door-to-door selling almost in the very beginning, with very little information. And of course, you get through your career. When I raised money from Sequoia Capital, I had a tote bag I was dragging up Sand Hill Road firm to firm. It was just, and they were one of the ones that gave a term sheet. You know the deal. Now suddenly all of this is automated. It's online. It's approved by the SEC. You can do all this from home. Certainly changing the landscape a lot. Secondly, in addition to the marketing and selling of the company digitally, the raising of money. The Regulation A+ capital raise that we launched. I have not had to go to Sand Hill Road. It took months to put together, but now we raise money every single day. And that's been a great success for us, because during the pandemic, a lot of people, frankly, are at home. So Whereas VCs have stopped investing almost full on. Crowdfunding is up 300% this year. And it helped us at a time when it might have been difficult to get cash. Suddenly we found ourselves with access to capital, able to fund the doubled team size during a pandemic and hopefully get a leg up on the competition. So we've been busy, and I learned a lot in this pandemic. I've been through several recessions. I've navigated businesses before them. We got relatively lucky this time. The last one was devastating for my previous company, okay? And I learned a lesson from that. We were 500 people, like 13, 14, $15 million in investment. And we had hundreds of clients, 5 buildings, sales teams in 9 countries. Sequoia Capital is a lead investor, and then the 2008 crisis hit. And it was just so difficult because the company had to shrink almost overnight. It was almost impossible to shrink that quickly. I learned a lot from that experience and the recessions before about what kind of company to build. We were very overexposed. We were arrogant. We were too bold. We were growing at 100% a year and thought we would do that forever. We thought just because we got on CNN and CNBC and every CEO of Autodesk comes through my office, CEO of everybody comes through the office, we thought we were fancy. But nothing trumps running a solid business and being sound and being careful. And I learned how to be a much more careful business person after that experience, how to, be more patient, not to grow so quickly, wait things out a bit. I think those types of experiences helped me navigate the company through this one, actually quite successfully. Knock on wood. I've seen very, very tough circumstances, so Cityzenith came out on top this time.
So zooming back out a little bit then so you talked about recessions, for example, which is kind of looking at kind of how markets shift and that sort of thing. The only previous examples I've seen or I've spoken to people when it comes to kind of digital twin technology was originally in the mining sector. So I used to do a lot of work talking to people around mining technology. And obviously digital twin technology in that context was often about kind of creating a digital twin of a mine environment that they can investigate and do things without having to invest extra capital, without putting anything at risk. So when I think about how that can apply to different things, one thing that I've been reading a lot on recently was about how, there was another company as well that I spoke to about how certain technologies like this can be used in, not necessarily in ways of combating the pandemic or preventing the pandemic, but being able to kind of think about better ways to respond, so to speak. What's your view there in terms of how something like digital twin technology could be used, again, not to prevent a pandemic, of course not, but how it could help whatever the next one would be, again, touch wood, it's nothing too dramatic, how digital twin technology could help play a role in mitigating the risks of that and kind of the damage of that whenever that may happen down the line.
Sure. In fact, we published an entire white paper a few months ago on this very subject, and it's worth reading. If you go to our website, in the resource center, there's a white paper called Digital Twins and COVID-19. The thesis is, just along those lines, the digital twins are excellent at aggregating tremendous amount of information, which is inherently spatial, and tracking the activity and data of all those different pieces simultaneously, such as the movement of a box, down an assembly line in a factory, or the movement of a car down a road, right? Up and down a building in the case of individuals and pedestrians. So the thesis that we made is that if we had properly tagged and had ways to track and trace and counter-trace the way that they did, frankly, in Asia, we could have created a digital twin that would have tracked the movement of the disease up and down buildings, and you could have used the digital twin to do everything from assess, locations for potential pop-up hospital centers that would provide extra beds, You could use digital twins to reroute logistics of getting things in and out of the city by integrating scenarios with existing traffic systems and optimizing ways in and ways out. You can use it to actually physically, if you could contract trace using mobile phones, you could trace the actual disease and then kind of not shut down the entire city just because you don't know where things are, but maybe just the areas of the city where the things are most concentrated without destroying the entire economy of the city if you know where things are. That's why that type of data transparency would have been wonderful. China and other countries like that, South Korea, they did a makeshift version of their own digital twins using basically civic tech and IoT sensors, and they knew where stockpiles were of various things, and they could route people to different places. They were kind of tying some apps together. It's kind of a makeshift Band-Aid digital twin, but it worked to some extent. It was better than not having one. Certainly, if cities had this infrastructure in place, it would have been so much easier to commandeer from mission control. There are many times when I saw Governor Cuomo speaking nightly on CNN where I thought he needs a digital twin to see where everything's moving. It was so much easier for him because you could see he just didn't know. I mean, he had data that was accurate, but he couldn't see things moving in real time. That's what was needed. So anyway, I mean, I think in the future, these types of things, hopefully out of the pandemic, it's not going to be the only use case, but it could be a use case if cities were to deploy urban scale digital twins.
And I know you'll have just seen the pop-up there, which suggests that we only have a few minutes left. But that's not why I'm going to ask you my final question. But final question then is, obviously you're the next 12 months are going to be both kind of unpredictable, but kind of also crucial in the next sort of few years in terms of defining what the future of digital twin technology is going to be, in terms of obviously laying the groundwork for what the next 10 years can bring. From your obviously business perspective, but also your kind of personal perspective, just sort of as a person in this world, what's sort of something that you are expecting and hoping to see in terms of the development of the marketplace, in terms of the development of the technology over the next 12 months, 24 months? Like what are you hoping to see?
Well, I think you'll see a lot of different kinds of activity. Our focus is on the use of this product at the city scale. I think you'll see a lot more projects being announced, a lot more things with a focus on sustainability, decarbonization, net zero, carbon neutral, things like that. That's going to be one of the drivers, I believe, because it will touch not just one sector, but multiple. It will touch the AEC sector, it will touch the infrastructure sector, it will touch the energy services sector. So my hope is that a couple of things happening, both emerging from COVID, which itself, if there weren't this climate crisis, is its own crisis. On top of that, you have a climate crisis, which is finally being acknowledged in the United States as a climate crisis, so it's been one for decades. But a president who's going to do something about it in the United States, hopefully, and seems to be making all the right decisions and announcements and appointments and whatnot. So I think there's a possibility that I believe that you're going to see, because of COVID, because of that combination with the climate crisis, accelerated adoption, in fact, at scale, across commercial organizations, as well as city governments, state governments, and even national governments. So stay tuned for that. It won't be overnight. The next year plus, you're going to see probably lots of great pilots, which are going to be first, second, third efforts, emerging eventually into a robust market. So it's worth paying attention to.